Welcome back to New Record Day. My name is Ron. In today's review, we're going to be taking a look at the Elac debut reference floor standing loudspeakers, and that leads to the disclaimer. No, I'm not being paid to say anything here today. All of my thoughts and opinions, they're my own. What you can expect from me is honesty. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about these guys, and I'm not going to hold back on any of my thoughts or opinions, so that's the disclaimer. And second, if you haven't had a chance to watch the What's Inside video where we tear these things apart and show you everything you would ever want to know about what's inside the loudspeakers, make sure you check out that video. And if you haven't watched the sound clips with commentary, then I would encourage you to check that out as well. It's going to give a lot of context as to what we're going to be discussing today. And yeah, without further ado, let's dive in. But before we do not forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you know when the next video drops. All right, let's dive in.
These are the Elac debut reference DFR52 floor standing loudspeakers. Based on the debut 2.0 series, the reference takes everything up another notch with a newly developed waveguide, enhanced bracing, cast chassis woofers, and dual flared slot port. Being a three-way bass reflex design, the DFR52 offers a 1-inch soft dome tweeter crossed at 2200 Hz, a 5¼ aramid fiber mid-range which is crossed at 90 Hz, and covering everything else below that, two more 5¼ aramid fiber woofers. On the back of the DFR52, we can see two ports, one up high behind the mid-range woofer, and another below behind the two woofers. Also on the back, we find 5-way binding posts which accept any speaker wire you can throw at it, but keep in mind, there are no options for bi-wire or bi-amping. Oh, and yes, those grills on the front are certainly magnetic, and the speaker comes in two nice looking finishes. The review sample sent to me is the walnut cabinet with black baffle, and they also offer a rustic oak with a white baffle that looks very nice as well. So yeah, what Andrew Jones has cooked up in the Elac kitchen appears to be a winner, especially at the asking price of $1,200 for the pair. I guess the only thing left to do is take these guys for a spin and let you know how the heck they sound. And with a warm welcome back to New Record Day, that is exactly what we are going to do.
All right, so based on the B-roll, you guys can clearly see that one rig that I use throughout the review process is the entire stack of shit. I'm such a potty mouth lately, it's ridiculous. All right, so being serious here, Shit Audio sent me the Freya Plus. If you haven't checked out that review, I would encourage you to do so. The Bifrost 2, again, check out that review if you haven't. And then a pair of Aegers monoblocks. And they're really interesting amplifiers, and that review will be coming out very soon. Should be by the end of the week. Nevertheless, that was one rig that I used throughout the review process, and I think of all of the stuff that I used, I found that pairing to work out the best with these guys. And I do want to mention, and no, this is not being sponsored by anybody, but Audio Art Cable did send out all the cables that I used in that rig. I'm not going to be talking about the performance of those cables because, well, he has sponsored me in some of the Shit Audio stuff, and I think that that could get me into some trouble. And I want to keep my integrity in check, but I will mention that Audio Art Cable is still offering 20% off cables, coupon code NRD. So if you need cables, if cables are your thing, I won't be long-winded about this. Just check out the information down below. And again, I'm just letting you know. So cable haters, let's relax. You can use zip cord, I don't care, it's totally cool. Okay, so enough of that. Let's go ahead and dive into all the gear that I use throughout the review process, and I'll just run through this as quickly as possible so I'm not wasting your time. Again, this is just to give you context as to what I was using as I was listening to these, and it might give you a better idea of what works and what works really well and what doesn't work so well. So let's dive in, starting with the first piece, which was a bit surprising. And it's only $500. Yeah, this guy, the SVS Sound Bass. You have seen this on my channel mentioned before. It's a Class D amplifier. It is kind of plasticky, right? Certainly not the last word in aesthetics, that's for darn sure. But what I liked about this, and I want to keep this short, is it did a great job with dynamics, and it did a great job with yanking out some pretty serious bass. We'll be talking about what bass you can expect out of these guys, but I gotta say, it's very powerful sounding, and I felt like in the dynamics department, as well as bass control, grip, authority, this guy did a really good job. What I didn't like about this guy is I felt like the top end started to sound a little bit dry with these guys. So there's always some kind of a trade-off when it comes to hi-fi, and that's just the way things are. So let's go ahead and talk about the next piece, which, again, certainly not expensive. We're jumping up in price a little bit, but still affordable, and I liked it even a little bit more than the sound bass. All right, so well under $1,000 US, we have the Iota VX, which again, I have mentioned on my channel before, and this is the SA3 and PA3 combo. Look, I wish that I could have just reported back to you guys that the SA3 is all that you need to wake these guys up, but that would make me a liar, and a liar is something that I'm not. So I'm just gonna briefly mention, you do have to have the PA3 to really get some decent dynamics out of these guys, but what I like so much about this combo is it didn't sound dry on top, it actually sounded beautiful on top, and this is one of the traits that I've brought up about the SA3 and the PA3 combo. I'm not gonna get long-winded about this or it's gonna start sounding like a commercial for all of these different products. Yes, I'm paying attention to you, Todd. I'm paying attention to you. Either way, let's go ahead and mention one more piece that I keep falling in love with it over and over and over again. It is a bit more expensive than either of these two combos, but my goodness me, I think it's worth every darn penny. I'm at a point with the NADM10 where you guys know the honeymoon phase, where you get in something and you're like, oh, it's the greatest thing ever, and then a few weeks go by and you're like, you're still here? I gotta put up with you? Whoa, Ron, whoa, careful with what you say next. Look, here's the deal, I'm obviously joking. NADM10, it is Class D, Hypex modules, and this thing is a powerhouse. I mean, okay, well, it's 100 watts per channel, so let's make sure that I'm careful with my words. What I mean by that is it does so many amazing things, including the ability to use Dirac to deal with any bass problems that you might end up with, and that's exactly how I use this. Every single time that I use it is I set up Dirac, and then I run my measurements, and then I fix bass, only bass, because I don't like what Dirac does as we go higher and higher in frequencies. I think you start losing out on some soundstage, some detail retrieval, things of that nature. Your results might vary, but I like setting up what's called a curtain, where it's only addressing bass frequencies. Usually in my room around 90 hertz and below is where I start seeing some problems. And yeah, it's like an amplifier from the future, and best of all, it sounds phenomenal. It really does. I don't think that the top end extension is quite as sweet as the Iota VX SA3 PA3 combo. It's so close. Every time I pull them out, I'm like, man, which one is better? Which one is better? Which one is better? I don't know. It's super close, but either way, what I like so much about this guy is being a Class D amplifier. When it comes to top end extension, that's where a lot of, cheaper Class D amplifiers struggle, is things just sound a little bit dry, a little bit chalky, and that's not what I'm hearing out of this guy. And no, NAD isn't paying me to say any of this. I bought this with my own money because you can't have it back, NAD, it's mine. It's mine forever. That's all the gear. We ran through it quickly. Let's go ahead and chat about these guys and how they actually sound. All right, top end extension, treble impressions. I think Andrew did a great job. We have a 1-inch cloth dome tweeter, which typically is a tweeter that I like quite a bit, and in this example, I do. What Andrew has done is he's kind of given us the best of both worlds, and what I mean by that is the top end extension is certainly not tilted, it is not elevated, it is not trying to force your attention on the top end at all. I think that it's actually quite balanced sounding. For me, this lends itself to the ability to really engage in the music, and when we have cymbal hits and splashes and crashes and things like that, yeah, we do want to hear that fundamental hit, which is actually quite a bit lower than you think, but the decay, the shimmer, all of that stuff that happens after that and the way that those cymbals are interacting in the room, or even just the sound of little details in the room, I want to hear all that stuff, but at the same time, I don't want it crammed down my throat. And that's exactly what I'm hearing in these guys, is I think that Andrew has done a great job with writing that line of, here's gonna be a lot of detail, even to the point where you're hearing things within the time domain, kind of like what I was just saying, is you're hearing that cymbal hit and then the decay of the cymbal hit, and the way that decay is affecting everything within the recording, within the room that the drums were being recorded in. All of that stuff I'm able to trek with when it comes to these loudspeakers, and I'm able to hear it clearly. But at the same time, being very balanced, I don't think that at any point it's forced or forward or too much detail, which can certainly lead to listening fatigue. So I'm gonna keep this short and sweet. I love the top end extension of these loudspeakers. I think that Andrew did a fantastic job, and I think that it is probably its most salient attribute, if you will, is that the top end extension sounds right. And now that I think about it, the reality is, with a soft dome tweeter, so the materials being used, the type of driver that is, I think it's about as good as it's gonna get. I mean, from there, it's not gonna get much better than what I'm hearing out of these guys, and that's how I honestly feel. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into upper mid-range. And if you haven't watched the sound clips with commentary, I really would encourage you to do that, because there's gonna be some context here. I noted that when I did some measurements, kind of in-room measurements with these loudspeakers, I actually measured 1 meter away in room, right? No gating or anything like that, where the microphone position is, and I do that intentionally so when you guys are listening to those sound clips, you kind of know how are those speakers measuring exactly at that point where I'm listening. And I did take note that in the upper mid-range, which I heard and then I could see in the measurement, it seems to me that there's just this slight fishbowl type thing. Very slight. We're not talking a big dip. I'm not gonna call it that because it's not. Just a gradual, shallow type fishbowl type thing. I can hear that in the upper mid-range of these loudspeakers. I don't know if it's intentional by Andrew. I haven't reached out to him and asked, hey, did you intentionally do this? Because I like him to be just as surprised as me when I finish a review, and then he can tell me everything I said, which was total bollocks. Andrew, bollocks. Ron, that's bollocks. Honey, do I sound like an idiot? Okay, I'll move on. Here's the deal. When it comes to upper mid-range, there's obviously a wide range of instruments that are dancing within that upper mid-range. That's where we see the real masters when it comes to getting the crossover right and getting the frequencies right and making sure that whatever drivers are being used, there's no stored energy or any kind of ringing, things of that nature. And I'm here to tell you right now that what I can appreciate about these guys is these are a loudspeaker that you can actually rock out with. And what I mean by that is distorted guitars being one of those instruments that is dancing within that arena. Well, I'm here to tell you that you crank that up and it might not sound all that good, but with how these are voiced, it does sound good. And I am a classic rock guy, so whether I'm making my way through AC/DC, or whether I'm listening to Guns N' Roses, or whether I'm listening to, you name it, Metallica, or even some punk stuff like Green Day, I can crank it. Is Green Day classic rock punk? Am I getting that old? Oh, 2020. I do not like you at all. You guys get my point, right? I don't want to be long-winded about this. The bottom line is the upper mid-range, while I think some might say, I'm not getting all the presence in the world in the upper mid-range. The truth is, I would probably agree with them, yes, but I would also say, do you really want all of it with everything that you're listening to? And I think that this could just come down to, what are you listening to? Are you listening to audiophile recordings where they're actually thinking through what that upper mid-range content sounds like? And so it's not gonna be too forward or bright or, yikes, please turn that speaker down. Well then yeah, you're gonna be fine. But if you're listening to a lot of popular music, if you're listening to a lot of radio hits and things of that nature, radio hits? Why did I say radio hits? Who listens to the radio anymore? As you're streaming popular music and you're listening to stuff that is popular right now, what I like so much about these loudspeakers, and given the price point of these loudspeakers and who I think is actually going to be buying these loudspeakers, the good news is this is a complete celebration of the upper mid-range. I think that you're going to be able to crank these up and you're going to be able to enjoy the heck out of them. Why didn't I just say that? I talked for like 15 minutes. Moving on to mid-range and the mid-band. The holy grail of anything audiophile related. If the mid-range is not right, then pack your bags and go home. We don't want to hear from you. And shame on you. And the good news is, for me, the mid-range sounds very good with these loudspeakers. And in a couple of categories, I would move away from very good and I would say excellent to superb. I would say that. And yes, that is all in reference to the human voice, vocals. So yeah, when it comes to the vocal department, keeping this short and sweet, I am pretty blown away by what I'm hearing out of these guys. The vocals are superb. It's a magical spot with these loudspeakers because it does lend itself to something that I've noticed with a lot of Andrew's concentric designs, where we have this holographic-like presentation of whoever is singing, and at the same time, it's just rendered beautifully in the music. I think that it's incredibly natural sounding. There is nothing about it that I think is overcooked or overbaked when we come to male vocals. It's not, hey, let's make this sound, you know, kind of warm and fuzzy for the sake of it being warm and fuzzy. Let's add some bloom to the male vocals. No, none of that stuff. I think it sounds natural, the way that it should. And on top of that, when we get into female vocals, which can really punish a speaker really quickly, it'll bring a grown man to tears real quick, I'm telling you. I mean, the female vocals on these speakers it's beautiful. Setting that to the side, everything else within the mid-band is definitely good. It's a bit of a mixed bag, in my opinion. I think that horns might suffer from a little bit more presence, again, leading into that upper mid-range. It's not quite as punchy as some other speakers that I've heard, but I would say that acoustic guitars, on the other hand, the body of acoustics and all the details that you're able to render out of an acoustic guitar, well, that sounded fantastic. And so it's gonna be, some stuff is really gonna shine and some stuff is gonna sound good enough. Anything about the mid-band, instrument-wise, that I didn't like? No. Nope. No problems. So, yeah. Let's talk about mid-bass and bass. I have said this time and time again, and I'm gonna continue saying it even though I'm boring myself. When it comes to mid-bass and bass, I need to hear texture in the bass, texture and tone. And I don't want to hear just the notes. Those are well farts, and I don't give a rip about any speaker that just can't get it right in mid-bass and bass. And often, this is just my experience, take it or leave it, often it seems like paper cone drivers lend itself to getting that texture and tone that I like a lot. And guess what? We can now add these into the mix of a material that I think will certainly deliver the goods. This is aramid fiber, is the material being used in the drivers. And with the mid-bass, I love the texture. I love it. I'm hearing the actual details throughout the mid-band. And that is something that I can certainly appreciate about these guys. Also, if we're talking about mid-bass, and look, everybody's definition of where mid-bass ends and where bass begins, it's gonna be totally different, and I'm not here to ruffle any feathers, but let's just say mid-bass ends off around 80 hertz. Let's just say that. Anything that you're hearing down to 80 hertz, it is certainly confident. It packs a punch. And I would go as far as to say, even if your definition of mid-bass is lower than that, getting all the way down to 50 hertz, where in my room, with my mics, with my measurement gear. That's where these dropped off. It is very confident all the way down to 50 hertz. So again, in the mid-bass department, I think that what we have here is a speaker that does a very good job. Confident, and you have texture and tone. Packs a punch. I want to hear that. I want to actually get some energy in the room, and these have no problem doing that whatsoever. So let's go ahead and talk about bass, and we'll keep this short because there's not a ton to talk about. Again, texture and tone, yes. Confident, down to 50, yes. But below that, you need a sub. What I would have liked to see, just getting straight to the point, is perhaps solid performance down to the 40s or mid-30s. And at that point, this would have been a grand slam home run, especially at the asking price. And you always have to, you have to think that through is, what are you gonna pay for these? At that point, we would have had the complete package, but unfortunately, you gotta get subs. If you already have a pair of these, what's your experience? Do you find yourself needing a sub? Do you think that they're, hitting low enough for you? I'm curious. My room is rather large, and yes, I do pull speakers away from the walls because because it's the right thing to do, for crying out loud. By the way, official new record day speaker setup tutorial, it's coming up soon. Stay tuned. Make sure you're hitting that bell notification because I'm gonna help you guys out. All right, Soundstage. Yes is the answer to that. We have a strong performer when it comes to giving you that performance in the room out of these loudspeakers, and was easily one of the most impressive things about them outside of the top-end extension, vocals, soundstage. All three of those elements combined in the end zone, touchdown, spiked the ball. There's Andrew, and he's like, yeah, I did it. And he did, because this is going to be a speaker that, and again, a lot of this has to do with how are you setting up the loudspeakers, and are you pulling them away from the walls? And when you do, these guys absolutely will vanish, and they do a very good job at it. So if you're in a soundstage, and who's not into soundstage? If you're into soundstage and you want to hear a musical performance in the room, you can certainly expect that out of these guys, and they do a great job with it. All right, so before we go, house cleaning topics, and I have two of them. Number one, when I did the sound clips with commentary and I showed you this frequency graph from the mic location, we saw a dip. Well, you saw a couple of dips, the guy that was making the video, and then a dip at 200 hertz. That has been confirmed, not the speaker. And somebody actually called it out right away. They're like, hey, I suspect that it's probably floor bounce. And sure enough, it is. So we have like a cancellation cause from the floor bounce that is showing up as this dip at 200 hertz. I reached out to Andrew and asked, hey man, I have this like floor bounce issue. Can that be fixed? And he replied back, yes, just make your floor less bouncy. Honey, let's go to Home Depot. We gotta make the floor less bouncy. Bottom line is this, the 200 hertz dip that we saw, not the speaker's fault. It is definitely room dependent, and your results certainly will vary. Second thing that I wanna mention is in the sound clips demo, when we got to mid-bass or bass, I forget which one, I thought I could hear a little bit of cabinet resonance. And so I spent some time really honing in, making my way through a bunch of bass tracks, and I do hear a little bit. Now, before everybody freaks out and loses their mind, I found that I spent more time trying to find the right track to hear a little bit of resonance than tracks that actually sounded quite good. So let's not panic. And as a lot of you already know from the What's Inside video, for those of you that you want to get your hands dirty, no, I'm not recommending that you do, because you will certainly void your warranty, but you could probably clean it up pretty easily. And hopefully that doesn't get me in trouble with Elac. Don't take apart your speakers. Oh man, this was a wild one. Holy cow. So yeah, I think we're done here. Fun review to knock out. Elac, thank you so much for sending out these guys. You got a winner on your hands. And folks, if you decide to get them, get some subs. Get 2 subs. because that's what we do here at New Record Day, and that's what you should do as well. Make sure you hit the bell notification so you know when the next video drops. Make sure you remember to subscribe, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video.